Okay, well, shall we maybe wait just a little bit longer if there's anybody else that's coming in? So Claire isn't coming, is that right?
I was not able to make it today, no.
Okay.
Ooh,
And
Anna.
Anna.
And Trisha.
Trisha. Hey, hi Anna, hi Trisha, and there's Pamela, right. Well, when the screen fills up, I sort of feel, okay, now we're ready to go. We've got a meeting happening here. And so I've offered to host, chair, facilitate, whatever this role is. And Benji is leading he's only here for half an hour, and hopefully the rest of us are good to go for the hour and a half. So maybe we do a check-in, a bit of a bioregional check-in, but also let's add in the question of, was this being an exploratory session, a regular session of exploration for bioregional catalysts? What is it that we're feeling we would like to explore in our bioregional catalysmness? So a check-in about your bioregion and a little bit about what are you wanting to be exploring in this space, either today or maybe as an ongoing thing. So those are two prompts for our check-in. And someone can start and then pass it on. Biddy.
I'm happy to start because I think I can weave in the two themes. Well, particularly if I count my bioregion today as California, and the effect of a very proactive state government on the environmental field is to often have me thinking that my bioregion actually, in a way, includes Northern California and Central California and Southern California. So I feel I'm kind of at landscape level speaking today. And I notice two parallel programs that are going on. One is a decision to allow extensive offshore 5-mile out wind farm development at the same time as in Kern County, which is kind of Central California, almost the breadbasket. Actually, it isn't necessarily the bread, the fruit and vegetable basket of California, and in some ways the world as a result of that. There is a intention to move ahead with compressed air electricity generation. And I'm just so struck by the fact that there are hands going up from many, many groups saying, hold on, we haven't assessed the impact of what this does to our friends and relations in the marine world, in the marine ecosystem, and or the land and air ecosystem. And that comes very close to ground for me in a lot of the meetings I find myself in, because on the one hand, I see the imperative, the urgency for feeding the electrical needs of California. And yet it's carried out in an assumption that feeding the electrical needs of California as they now are and as they are projected to be is how we are going to actually survive and thrive in the future. And I feel this deep tension in my body because a whole part of me remembers the day the Thanksgiving Day when the electricity went out. And for me, it became a blessed day of silence and lack of power, and a reorienting myself to the land around me. And for so many, it became, God darn it, I can't cook the turkey, and the lights have gone out. And led to my husband actually leaving the house and going to a hotel in a place where he could watch television for the day. So important was it to him to be able to watch his Thanksgiving activities. And I feel some of those tensions in what is going on in my body when I'm in different parts of the bioregional activators and bioregional catalysts and earth regenerator field. There is this tension between got to get things done quickly, got to meet the imperatives for survival and flourishing, and the, hey, hold on, have we done any kind of analysis of the species that are here already? Have we looked to see who's here and whose life we might be upending? And how do we meet these needs of these apparently conflicting needs for biodiversity? I was really struck in one of the sessions that Benji led by, I think, somebody called Jay, who spoke to the kind of the non-profit. We'd been here already, we're doing this stuff, and it kind of felt as though that was a dragging, resisting energy. And I feel that same sense of energy when I feel the defenders of biodiversity in California saying, hold on, we just don't know what these huge floating wind farms are going to do to the marine species. And, you know, that's the spirit in which I'm coming here today. And it's uncomfortable because it's complex. And yet I feel a need to hold it and name it. So that's my check-in today. Preston, how are you today?
Very well, maybe. I find you and I tend to gravitate sort of in the same directions. So I was just thinking how we are Toronto area, Great Lakes. We are sort of in that headlong run to activation. And from my perspective, because I'm not sort of in the midst of how the decisions are being made, I'm not seeing a lot of it yet. So mine is sort of, for me, it feels like I'm inching towards it, but I'm sure it's quite exactly the opposite. But within that framework, I see this whole aspect of, and I think it's much of what you're talking about is sort of the, right now, pre-collapse versus post-collapse, but those aren't really dichotomous. There's a discontinuity through there. And the organizations that are reaching out and want to be sort of part of that journey are also part of that problem. And that the inability to recognize we the problem, the tension in that I'm finding challenging to not be screaming about. I'm sure a few people have noticed my writings in the group have reflected on this from a few different perspectives. And I have no desire to make a huge amount of noise about it, but trying to understand what that pathway is going to look like, and that there are groups out there that are doing this work, but they're not being recognized for that work, and there's this disconnect in that way as well. So yeah, I've spent a lot of my time, I'm not Indigenous, I know very little about it, I'm really approaching it new, but I'm really making a lot of effort to be listening and trying to understand and hear, but also for them to be heard. You can't just bridge an immediate relationship in these senses. There's so much damage over so many centuries that of course there can't be trust. And when I look at the screen, of course I see a whole lot of people coming from colonialist backgrounds. So we don't represent exactly the warmest hand that we're putting out there to try to, build these new relationships. But at the same time, I think we have to have that an aspect of the humbleness required to make that bridge begin to happen if we want to have a success in a place like Toronto. Otherwise, those that have been the institutions continue just to be the institutions until they're not functioning anymore. So that's sort of where I'm sitting tension-wise, but without a great deal of details around really what's unfolding, just my thoughts on it. I'm gonna actually hand off to Anna. Yeah.
Yeah, so I really, I appreciate kind of what you were commenting on too. I too am not Indigenous, but I'm also trying to learn and educate myself and become less ignorant, I think, of a lot of I don't know how to say it. I guess just become more knowledgeable about how past peoples were able to interact with the environment. And I think that it really gives a lot of insight into bioregionalism. And I know that we've talked a bit about it on our Great Lakes bioregional chat that we had on Monday, Preston, where we, just the cultural dynamics between, in my area, the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe. So that's definitely something that I've been reading a lot about and spending a lot of time thinking about and trying to become more involved in that community as an ally in whatever ways I can. I think the other things that are happening in my bioregion are Joe and Penny will be coming through New York and we'll be making stops along the way in Rochester. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, I'm from Buffalo. I come from Onondaga territory, part of the Haudenosaunee along Lake Erie. And Joe and Penny are going to be traveling to Toronto and then to Ithaca to meet with David Sloan Wilson, who's the guy from Pro-Social. He is one of the developers. I'm also a Pro-Social facilitator, so I'm very excited for them to be getting together. They will be doing a virtual community discussion workshop thing that I'm very much looking forward to them both kind of converging. I know that they've been worked closely together in the past. This is the first time that I've kind of seen them interacting as much as they are, so excited to see what discussion takes place. Ithaca isn't too far from where I'm located, and then Joe and Penny will be stopping. And actually, Benji, have you decided if you're coming yet?
Sadly, I'm not going to be able to make it. Yeah, I wish I was, but there's a few reasons for it, and I'm going to be supporting as much as I possibly can from afar.
Okay, well, hopefully some other time you guys will all make it up to this region again.
I have a lot of family in Buffalo, by the way.
Yeah, I know that you've mentioned that in the past, so yeah. Well, if you're ever in the area, definitely let me know. But yeah, so we're preparing for them to come through Rochester and Buffalo. I think it's going to be a fairly informal meeting, hoping to get some people who are interested in the area just to even start the conversation about bioregionalism and all of the great things that this community is doing, and maybe bring more people into this community as well, because I think that it's just a great space to collaborate and think and work through these challenges that we have. So that's pretty much all that is happening in my region. Let's see, how about RJ?
Thanks. Yes, I'm thinking of a couple things. One that you mentioned, Preston, the pre-collapse and post-collapse, and it can be going on all at the same time. As part of what I think you were saying. So, and because it can be going on all at the same time, there's the ability to be more aware of it if people are just looking around and starting to think about it. So what we're trying to do, because these are not, for some reason, these are not common terms in our bioregion in northeastern Pennsylvania, bioregion and regeneration. And some of that is because the work that's been going on has been going on so long, it's got the old terms, which have in some ways similar meanings, but not quite as forward thinking as we would all like. And they're certainly, if you can say entrenched in a good way, that's the good aspect, that they're there, but we need to add to the language. And I think more than anything else, what we're seeing is there are a lot of good things to maintain that we don't want to drop. For example, the directory, but that also takes, the region-wide directory, but that also takes a lot of work. And it also takes continuing support. And some of our past support for that particular endeavor has dropped away just because change happens. And the other thing is, I think we're doing better at looking at the different points in the bioregion where there is a lot of activity and things that must be maintained and must grow. And we're sharing that information in a better way, maybe because of the new technology possibly too. But that helps the awareness. We haven't figured out how to efficiently, if that's the right word, connect everything yet. But we're working toward, I think there's a better word than efficiency. Connection and collaboration is the better word. There's a lot of it going on out there, but we need to figure out how to do it better. And this also brings up the edge aspect of it, is how far, because the edge is so important, how far do we go with that? For example, I'll just say briefly, the Delaware River and the Delaware River Basin is a very important part of our region, but it tends to be right at that east point. And as you cross the river, you're into the boundary of New Jersey. So we're talking to people in New Jersey that are doing very good things and want to be part of what we're doing. How far do we stretch that? So that's the edge aspect. And I've said enough. I'll pass it to
RJ,
Just before you do that, could you say a little bit about the exploratory session? Because you were somebody that's been here for a while, and if you could say a little bit about what your sense is of what you might need or what you feel your bioregion could benefit from this exploratory session before you pass it on. Sorry to jump in.
Yeah, I just think better ways to continue connect and have this discussion where everybody is really busy and trying to maintain, and how not to feel overwhelmed with that. In some ways, that's not even money at this point. Some ways it's just time that I see. And I have to say, like many places, we've had some long rambling conversations that we try to hone in on the important piece to move forward. And it's not so easy to do that because there's so many things that need to be talked about, and not just talked about, but done. So I see two key places in that. We have a place called Nurture Nature Center, which is essentially an open place to discuss things like bioregionalism, and the Lehigh Water Gap, everything that's gone up there, that's center too, and Stonehead. So maybe we can do more of that, because people will come to an informal event if it's announced enough beforehand, and if we're clear enough in what we're going through in that event. So that may be the thing over the next year, that we try to do a couple of those types of events, just to bring the key players together around it, because I don't see any opposition to that. It's just finding the way to do it. So in exploration, how do we do it better? And I'm right along, I can say for myself, I'm learning from everybody here. And I think anybody else who could come in from our region would also learn the same way. So I'm trying to pass that information on as well. So I hope that answered your question, Jan. A lot of it is just without more time, how do we do it better and maintaining pro-social? Because I think pro-social is key, and we aren't really having a problem with that here so much at this point. Is that, yeah. And I'll
RJ, do you mind if I go next simply
Yeah,
because I
sure.
gotta
Go
duck
ahead.
out a little early? Hey, I appreciate it.
Go ahead.
And thank you for all you just shared too. That's orienting for me. As far as my bioregional check-in, I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona, of all places. Still surprised that that's the case. I actually sat in the sun for the Biochar and Beyond update yesterday and got sunburned and had to hide from the sun in the afternoon on July 12th or January 12th, which was a very strange feeling. And I feel like I'm gloating. I apologize if I'm coming across that way. I know many of you are very cold and looking for vitamin D, and I wish I could share some. Let's see, I'm no longer planning on going to Toronto or New York, which means I will be here. And there are some really interesting permaculture projects down in Tucson in particular, Brad Lancaster. So now with more time on my hands, I'm considering places that I can go and conversations that I can have in this area, since why not if I'm gonna be here for a couple months. In addition to that, I would love to, since I'm not going to be here for the remainder of the meeting, just really briefly announce that I posted some reflections and a recording from Wednesday's event where we sort of mapped, the title was Mapping Our Curiosities, but really what I invited us into was a specific design challenge that we're encountering in core teams in the formation of landscape partnerships and the intent was to invite us into the emerging conversation so that we could kind of embody it, so that we could see it from within rather than looking at what others are doing. That was my intent. Maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. I don't know. To some degree, maybe it worked. But the conversation was really good anyway. I thought that we really explored some interesting territory, and I did my best to highlight some of the things that I heard in the reflection. So I just posted that in the Bioregional Catalyst this morning. Put quite a bit of time into it. I think it's worth the read. And I wanted to announce that next week, what we're doing on both Wednesday and Saturday is just exploring how we can support Toronto, Rochester, and New York as a network of bioregions in the lead up time to the bioregional activation workshops that'll happen on the ground there. I think what we're going to do, and I'm going to send out invitations to the people who are carrying the processes for every bioregion this afternoon to invite them into this. I think on Wednesday, what we're going to do is just come together to embody prosociality as a network of bioregions and say, hey, look, here we are. We're all together. We're trying to figure out this space. We're trying to figure out how to collaborate, how to become friends, how to support each other. How exactly we'll do that, I'm not sure yet, but that's going to be the intent for Wednesday. And I think that the intent for Saturday, and I just had a conversation with Claire about this earlier. So this is just, we're still in brainstorming space, but I wanted to share it anyway. If we will have already explored that pro-social space on Saturday, I think it'd be really interesting if we then gave the communities of Toronto, Buffalo, and Rochester to share a bit of art, share a bit of symbolism that reflects their place, that helps them to identify with their place, and share it with others as a way to talk to other bioregions and say, this is what represents us in some way, shape, or form, as a way to explore shared identity. That's what we're kind of playing with at the moment. So next Wednesday and Saturday is going to be building up to underground workshops. And I think a lot of the Bioregional Catalyst sessions for the remainder of this month will hold that intention. So that's what I wanted to share. Sorry if I went on for a little while, but yeah, I think that's all I've got for my check-in. Yeah, thanks. How about Pamela?
Thanks, Benji. I'm really glad you had a chance to tell us what you're doing. And so is the article that you're referring to, because I've been a little bit exploring understandings of bioregional activators, is that the one?
Indeed. Yep, that's the one.
Okay, great. Okay. Got that marked to read later. Thank you.
I'll post a link too. Thank you.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah. And Anna, I've never seen you before in this space, so I just want to welcome you. Maybe you've been here and I haven't been, because I've been a bit, in and out, but it's really good to see you here. What are the prompts again? Sorry, Jan. What's happening in the bioregion? What do you want to explore in the Friday exploratory session? Yeah, that's a total intersection for myself. I have a need to find a way to organize my own relationship with where I am in my bioregion. I am in, for those who don't know, I'm going to call it Salmon Nation. I'm going to take away the Cascadia. I really prefer the Salmon Nation, the southeast corner of Vancouver Island. I don't say Victoria intentionally because it gives me the creeps. And my particular watershed is Bowker Creek, although the water that I get is from 40 to 60 miles away in the Souk watershed, which is a dammed water system that Los Angeles style feeds the hinterland, the development of which is causing strain. Anyway, so the Bowker Creek watershed has been husbanded by a core group of, oh man, I think it might be 12 people for at least as many years. And I am really pleased to intersect with them and am trying to find my way to be useful by connecting them with another small group that I'm a participant in that I'm not going to go into the details of it. The fact is that there are these pieces that are disconnected that I am sitting on. It's like little like an ice flow down a river. And my heart beats with the Bowker Creek and the people that I've met who are trying to bring the place to life. Super aware of the desecration of the landscape as being the equivalent to the desecration of the population who lived here. No difference whatsoever. And as a settler colonist, like, I think we are the ones who are supposed to be here, and I've said that before. The reason we're all white folks is because we're the ones who have to learn what it is that, we don't need a Lekwungen speaking person here. They're busy doing what they're doing. So as I sort of surface through this layer of colonization that I've born into and am embedded in, and coming to realize the magnitude of the criminality of colonization, I'm reminded of how it was when I was a kid and I heard about the Holocaust. And you wonder, oh, gee, how did they not know? And oh, well, we didn't know. We just didn't know that this was happening. And how that is so parallel to how it feels to come to understand that this is a criminal exercise that we're perpetuating on this land and with these people. And it's really tricky to figure out then coming into this, what I consider this new understanding, which I think is more closely aligned to what can be called true. And that's a lot to work out, and we're all part of it. We're all part of it. And so it's a conversation that I think is wonderful to share together, because it's a layer that that needs to be addressed, and needs, for me, it needs collective intelligence. I don't have it. I can't think everybody's thoughts. I can't come to clarity on my own. But I have a personal responsibility to inform myself as best I can about what has happened here. This is going on way too long. So I am not sure yet how I want to use the bioregional catalyst space, explore and update, as, you know, a place to gain greater clarity and coherence about how I can best participate in anything that has all the words, you know me, I say this all the time, are problematic, a restorative, a regenerative, or whatever. I'm not the one who's out pulling the weeds. There are a lot of other people out pulling the weeds, but I want to find out where I can do what I can do here. And I would love to be able to use this space to try talk my way into that clarity. Enough for now. And I will pass to Gail, please.
And I'm going to just share a little bit from the spirit of the place, the candle flame, and the sister circle that will be the local activators. My second attempt to get us talking is a series of Zoom calls that will just be campfires. So we had the second one yesterday. And I'm
The new
feeling,
people, Gail, can you say which bioregion you're in? Just so
oh
that-
gosh, Jen, thank you. I went into the candle flame, you see. I'm in North Idaho, in the land of the Naha, the southmost Kootenai people. Our first intention in our conversations is to make relations with these natives. And so we're making plans to have a little excursion, a little field trip out to the tribal headquarters. That is in the spirit of what you were talking about, RJ, which I really, really love. Nature, nurture, just let's have a conversation. What we are most interested in is the real local part of the bioregion, where we can drive to one another's little small holding and visit. So what we're thinking about are field trips, one to the other, and then perhaps a festival in my field. I have a field that I have devoted to the commons, to the 50-50 project, and now it seems to want to come to life with a little improv music, a little art, and a lot of talk. So this is what I'm holding when I bring us together on the Zoom calls. And so far, we've had wonderful conversations twice. There's more vigor in in our conversations than there was last year when I had to let it go. But maybe there's more vigor in me and my vision for just local regeneration and local biodiversity. So the first call, we just focused on what was the wildlife we were seeing, what's alive. And I think that what's alive is appropriate any season of the year. What's alive? What do we see? What can we support? So we will eventually ask Jan to visit our Zoom call and, you know, maybe make a little Kootenai to Kootenai presentation, the upper and the lower. And she invited us to come visit her last year, and maybe we can make that happen this year in a easier way. So there are conversations going on, and we recognize one another as players in the local field. So let's see.
And anything about this exploratory session and how you would like it to be used ongoingly? That was another part of the check-in, a longer check-in today.
You know, I learned so much from each one of you. So it's just what I like for the exploratory session is our openness, our companionship, and how we teach one another. So I'm going to pass it to you, Chad. What do you say?
Thank you, Gail. I love the idea of a festival, bioregional festival. Oh, we don't have to wait until it gets warm again. Yeah, and field trips too. So I am finding my rhythms are changing a bit this year. I guess we're in the new year now. Teaching more university courses, and it's taking up more time, and other things are taking up more time. So just feeling into a change of rhythm, and yeah, and how to be with that in a way where I was sort of getting juiced up by showing up in ER. And well, for the next few months, my center of gravity is switching towards the teaching, how to use that as an opportunity. And I said this before, and I haven't figured it out, but to draw more of the, you know, the thinking and feeling here into those courses. I guess it's an iterative process, but I don't want to be teaching the same courses forever, so better figure it out soon. Yeah, and I don't. So part of that is I'm a little out of touch with what's happening here. So I am in Anishinaabe lands, Southeast Michigan, just outside of Detroit, outside of Lake Huron. And yeah, I don't have any particular news about what's going on, but you could also define that within the Great Lakes region. So I do plan on making it out to see Joe and Penny and Brian in Toronto in a few weeks. I don't think we'll make it out to upstate New York, unfortunately, but who knows? So we have to make it back for teaching here. And, you know, and I guess have been as involved the last couple months with some local projects that have been active with for the last few years. And that's another thing I'd like to figure out. Also, we could say that those activities have to do with things that are very sort of kindred to ER, but they're kind of doing their thing, going along. And I have this feeling where I'd like to see more happening, but can't take responsibility for it all unto myself. But at the same time, could be doing more. So trying to figure out how I could be doing more without sort of connecting those projects into the bioregional thinking and the Great Lakes emergence here as one sort of exciting opportunity where I can see that happening. So, yeah, what's going on here? And let's see, we have Trisha. We've heard from you yet.
Hey everyone, good to be here. Okay, what's going on in my bioregion? Actually quite a bit. So we have like this full group of volunteers here right now.
Again,
we have
say
like,
where your bioregion is. I think most people know, but maybe there's a few new people here.
thank you, Jan, thank you. I am in the, I don't know actually what my bioregion is. I live on the Osa Peninsula in Costa Rica. Is the bioregion Central America? Is the bioregion the peninsula? Is the bioregion Southern Costa Rica, which is Baruca land? We've kind of decided that the watershed is the Gulf of Dulce, but we're still kind of up in the air around the bioregional thing. And so what's interesting too, speaking of like this cadre of volunteers, so we have two women who are really skilled, like the gifts that they're bringing is around like digital communication and social media stuff and website, and so we brought them on to help us with the Cooperativa Higuerones and kind of updating our information. And so myself and Iris and these two women were sitting together yesterday, and as Iris and I were sharing kind of all of these things with them, they were like, wow, that all sounds fascinating, and we have no idea what this language is that you're using, right? Bioregion, bioregional learning center, regeneration, everything like that. And these are actually pretty astute, you know, young women, and they came here like specifically to kind of work in this, you know, regenerative type community development, yet they're not in that bubble, right? And so what it's gotten me recognizing as well is how much in that bubble I kind of am, right? And how I almost don't know how to communicate outside of people who are already kind of the converted, if you will, right? Or the activated or the engaged. So very grateful to have these new women to help us to translate what it is we're doing into terms that people like them who are really interested in where we are in collapse, you know, in the climate crisis and all of those kinds of things, in actually approaching things in a positive way. So they're interested in all of this stuff, yet they don't know the terminology. They're not kind of plugged into that groove. And I'm actually super grateful for that, because it was a real great wake up for us around what's your languaging, who's your audience, what are you communicating, how are you communicating it. And so these women are helping us to do that, and they're helping us to do that right now, which is a great time because we're about, so February 2nd is actually the 3-year anniversary of Higuerones actually doing its first activity, which was a stone soup social, where of just bringing people together. So being able to kind of have this recap, and then Iris reminded me that a year ago, right around this time, she and some other volunteers came in and they started our first website. So now kind of doing this update, it's kind of like, oh, we didn't plan this out, but this is like really nice, you know, like this is kind of going to be able to give us a synopsis. And what it's also made me realize is just kind of the magnitude of what I've taken on, of what we've taken on, and has created like a lot more softness for me around myself, and around kind of like like what gets done, what doesn't get done. And around this issue of like charging forward, or around the issue of like, are we in a marathon or are we in a sprint? And that sometimes we're in a marathon and sometimes we're in a sprint. And really being able to kind of discern for myself when and where that is. So I'm kind of in a time of reflection around that. Another thing is kind of related to this is so next Wednesday we are having the first of the year OSA sandbox. So we've kind of taken it out of the name OSA interface in ER and made it into sandbox, because we really wanted to just be this participatory collaborative space where we can be exploring different things, because there's different things that we're exploring here on site. And just from like different information, I hear other places are exploring it. So like, how do we do collective decision making in an efficient and effective way? How do we do this multiple capital accounting? How do we, like, what are the methodologies that we're kind of loosely taking on? How do we do evaluation? So all these kind of things. So it's going to be, for right now, we're putting it out as twice a month, and just to see where that takes us and to see if that flows and if it flows well, because as a bioregion, we're also recognizing the need to really, like, it's so wonderful to be part of a group of bioregions, and at the same time, based on needs, we also need to be able to focus as a bioregion on like how we move our things forward, and also how we fulfill one of our goals, which is the marrying of the analog and the digital. And so yeah, I think that's where I am on the bioregion. As far as these exploratory sessions, one of the things that, yeah, I think for myself, just really maybe having more clarity, and I think it's us creating the clarity of what we want the space to be, like what we intend the space to be. And then through having that clarity, everybody being able to figure out if this is the space for them to be, engaging in or not, like as RJ was talking about time, and how much time we have. And so really being able to kind of understand a little bit more of like, okay, where can I contribute the most, as well as where can I receive the most for the work that I'm doing in my bioregion. So that would be my wish, I guess. And Brian, I don't think we heard from you, have we?
No, and for that reason, excuse me, I'm going to try and keep it really, really short. In the bigger picture, and there's a lot, Tricia, thank you. There's a lot in what you said that I really is resonating in very practical ways with me. My bioregion, like your own, is we have an official bioregion, but it just doesn't have any meaning and would kind of fit in with the colonial machine that disallows indigenous people just in general. I mean, I'm in Southwest Virginia, so there is an identified bioregion, and the ecoregion project I've identified as Southwest Virginia Regenerative Ecoregion, comprised of like 660,000 square acres, is kind of within that belt. So that's online if anybody cares. But there was something that Pamela said earlier about criminality, and I'm in ways that I don't quite understand, quite honestly. I mean, I have a pretty good sense of what my own process is with respect to learning, adaptation, transformation, but it's very, very subjective in terms of, you know, my experience and how that translates into meaning for me. But I really believe, kind of along the lines of the criminality, is that over decades, I'm a recovering individual with some decades of, you know, 12-step programs and all of that. Also a training and background as a counseling psychology, in counseling psychology. But that we're sitting on a generational crisis in what I believe is a shifting paradigm, and that paradigm occurring at global levels, you know, to varying extent and degrees. I think transformation, you know, for me, my own connection and sense of that is really in relation to evolutionary theory, and over the last a little better than 9 months, I've been working directly with David and the pro-social communities in the launch of the pro-social commons, like in March, April of this last year. But that the evolutionary process of variation involving adaptability prior to selection. Selection is kind of a mystery, but I think we kind of as a group it would be in our best interest and service in the work that we do to come to greater appreciation or understanding for, in an evolutionary sense, for how selection occurs and what it is. And you know, part of David's work in that regard is kind of, from my perspective, at the forefront of shifting a perspective basically from genetics that is grounded and based in genetics to what concept I've adapted and been working with over the last 3 years is conscious cultural evolution. So things in my immediate ecoregion, as some of you may have assessed, not good. I'm currently engaged in some really kind of unpleasant work in terms of making some decisions, the best decisions I can with kind of the information that I'm working with. So I'm feeling spread kind of thin, and kind of in my personal life, relationship to loved ones, family members. You know, my sense, quite frankly, is I got to do better than what I've been doing to this point. I just, you know, I've always been a bit clueless, so it's a process of figuring that out. Thanks for allowing me to check in, and I've got to go here pretty shortly, so let me pass it to Jen, who's suggesting. Okay, thanks. Made it easy for me. Thanks.
I think I'm the last to go, so thank you, Brian, and thank you. So yes, I'm in the Upper Columbia River Valley, where the Kootenai River joins the Columbia River, and it's part of a larger bioregion. And I'm in the small community of Nelson, British Columbia. And it's January and it's +7 today, and that's ridiculously warm, like really, really ridiculously warm for us in this area. So just, you know, the feelings of the rumblings of the unstable climatic situation, and then what that might mean for our summers and our fire seasons, etc. So it's just feeling that. And so, you know, the questionings all the time is how am I spending time relevant to helping myself and many, many others and other species respond to this? Is just constantly a question, and I'm hearing that a little bit in other people too. It's like our time is thin, and what we wanted to spend it well, in this sense about this, the sense of both the need to, the urgency to go fast and do things, and the sense of being able to work fully and understanding not to make some of the same areas, and how do we build deep relationships with the place and the people that have been here before and with each other. And so I hear that as a theme and feel it in my own life. And I, you know, I've been very focused on, I've done a few presentations recently when I've been invited to do some things. I quite often do work outside of the community because this is a small community, and I've done lots of things either by traveling or doing online things outside of the community, and find a space where I can be appreciated and do things in those communities. And then my own little community kind of goes, what does she do? I don't know anything about it. But once in a while I get invited to speak somewhere, like the Rotary. I was speaking, I think I mentioned before, the Rotary Club of all people invited me to speak. And I thought, oh, wow, you know, what am I going to talk with them about? But anyway, I managed to put something together, and they went, wow, that was great. And I thought, you know, I've done that with other groups, a little, and I thought, well, maybe I should put all those together and make them into some kind of a Zoom information video that kind of looks at some big picture things and then weaves it into some of the bioregional framing that would be good for here. And I kind of know how to do that, but then I'm going, I don't know, like, I'm sort of feeling a bit like Joe was very strong about saying, you know, he wouldn't go to a community unless he was invited in. And I totally understand that, because it's that working together of relationships that is the basis for then the next level of relationships. And I feel like I'm having a hard time getting invited into my own community. and I think and I can feel almost neurotic about that, because I've got all this stuff I really like to do and feel I've got the capacities to do. But how to engage? And I actually put out some things to a couple of different groups here that I think would be very relevant to having a discussion bioregionally. And, you know, they're young staff that are working in a nonprofit organization that are doing really great earth awareness, environmental awareness, public engagement things, restorative work, you know, but they're working with a nonprofit that's not funded very well, and they're just working so hard. So basically they've said, well, I'm sorry, we don't have time to talk with me. And I'm thinking, yeah, you know, how to get those conversations going. So those are some of the things that I feel I'm facing in working in my own bioregion. So I'm just going to kind of being in that role of facilitator today. I'm looking at some of the themes that came up, and certainly that sense of, yeah, the how do we find the slow weaving, the marathon, as Tricia said, with the sprint, that, and Mitty talked a bit about that, and Preston a bit too. How do we do that deeper work? So that seemed to be a theme that came out today. Certainly the sense of how do we work with Indigenous people in our communities. I think there's quite a difference in our history too, and our assumptions in Canada than the US. And I just wanted to name that there is when we're talking about working with Indigenous people, there's differences already in the cultures that we're in about that. The sense of maybe each of us having some time to work with our own regions, and as Pamela said, try talking, like maybe that's something that we could be focusing on more here. I think we have done that a bit in the past in these sessions where someone booked a time and we did it a little bit like they presented what some of the questions were. We listened, we gave feedback. So maybe that's a direction that we need to go more, and how we set that up or form that up, whether that's part of Friday it feels that there is this, and for people that are newer to this, like we've had the bioregional catalyst was brought in basically by Benji with several different aspects of it. And so, and now we've got the bioregional activators, which is doing something. So it's like, well, how do we work with that? And what is our role and what do people most need here? And as Tricia also said, like basically being able to say, what is it that people want? And then kind of co-creating that place. And really that relates to another theme that people have said is that their time is thin. Like we really want to make sure we use our time well. So not just having like, ho hum, here we go through the boring check-ins and bioregional chat, but how do we really use this in a way that's really meaningful time? Like maybe Chad, we work with Chad about how to weave some of this into the classes, or you say more about what those questions are, or RJ about some of the projects you're doing. Like maybe we just need to form that up a bit more. I'm just looking at some of the things. Some of the, I think Brian's left. So, but some of the questions about how do we serve cultural evolution by what we're doing here? How do we serve our bioregions, but how do we serve the aspects of what it is to be evolving our cultures? But the generational issues that we have both here and also in our communities. And I'll mention too, it's like so great to see a younger face in here and such an experienced person. So great to have you here. Just a couple before I get to your RJ, I just want to, before I forget, what else was there? Some things that we were taking about. Anyway, I named a few of them. And if anybody else came up with some that I didn't mention, please bring those forward. RJ.
Yes, I'm going to be a little seditious for a moment. I'm thinking of the way we normally get the word out and talk about language. And I know it works, unfortunately or fortunately. If we were doing it the way some of our more successful groups are doing, we'd be doing a bioregional regeneration bake sale at the at the farmers markets. And we'd have organic cookies, tasty cookies that would come with a little message to go along with it. And we'd sign up, we'd ask people for their names and emails, and we'd probably have a film night somewhere, and we'd probably sell t-shirts that would sell really well. And then the name would be out there, but I'm not sure what would become of it. And I know that's the way we naturally connect. And there are plenty of events that'll be coming up in the next couple of months that would allow us to do something like that, to join in with the crowd. But I'm pretty sure seditiously that would not do much for really going in the direction that we know we need to go. So I just put it out there, knowing that that is the common approach here. I won't speak for any other place, and how to do that differently and still get the energy and the people who would be interested in this. And maybe some of it, as you said, is figuring out a way to speak to groups, but not to get the Rotary mug at the end of it and say, oh, that was nice, we really loved it. And then everybody goes their separate ways feeling good, and rightly so, but it doesn't change us. So that's my little seditious piece, is what else could we be doing that would be effective within a bioregion to get, maybe adaptable from bioregion to bioregion to get our points across. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say.
So RJ is sort of like, how do we use this space to be able to share? How do we engage our bioregions? What can be shared in our learning well? Great, thanks.
Yes.
Preston.
Thank you. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting juxtaposition that I'm finding within this. Jan, you were just sort of listing structures and scaffolding to needing to be provided to try to give some sort of direction. But I think at some level, I'm also finding a great deal of opportunity in the lack of structure. It's what bubbles forth. It's my thoughts eliciting ideas from Pamela or Trisha or otherwise, this collectivity, and Pamela mentioned that very directly, that we don't have all the solutions, and being able to just throw stuff out. Structure sometimes creates too much rigidity. And therefore, we don't even realize what questions need to be asked or what new insights will suddenly shift things. I mean, I've been struggling a lot with this aspect of the Indigenous, as I was mentioning, and Pamela, in a word, said, they're doing what they're doing. They don't necessarily need to be here. And just that one flash, I found relieved a fair tension in myself. More blessed because I'm in that fog still, trying to figure out what my pathway is, like we all are. But there's something very special in my mind, I think, about we're stuck in a worldview, a framing, and an approach that our foundational years have created, where we're individuals trying to find the individual pathway, trying to structure individual next steps. And that's all part of the problem. But you can't immediately reverse those types of frameworks, because that's how we think. That's been the whole system that we have passed through and what we still emulate. And so this group of 12, 15, however many people it ends up being at a time, I'm learning fascinating things just listening and talking and thinking. And I'll wake up in the morning with a whole new set of thoughts emerging from these. And this is a very important process, but we have a hard time valuing if we don't have a tick box measure of, what did we come out from in this session? What made it valuable? I'm joining the campfires now, realizing the same thing. Less structure is sometimes more important. I don't need to sit and think about what I want to contribute. It'll bubble forth. So yeah, I want to thank everybody for being along this journey and helping me along this way. It's fantastic.
Thanks, Preston. And I think it's, yes, how to engage ourselves together so that we can be that creative emergent place. And does it need to be different from campfire? Is it different than that? Or how is it different from, I guess some of us who have been around for a long time, is how does it differ from the bioregional activators? So that's kind of a question that's a little bit up. But thanks, Preston. And Trisha.
Yeah, Preston, I just wanted to thank you for naming that and noticing that, because one of the things for me about these Friday sessions is the way that these commonalities begin to form as a result of not having an agenda, right? Not having a, something that we're trying to achieve. That for me is very refreshing. And for me, honestly, it feels as if it's doing exactly what I sense we need to be doing, which is how do we find one another and vibrate together on a certain level, and find what becomes emergent in the group. And I like the fact that you mentioned that. And I know that that's why I come here to Friday sessions. But I would say, if we decided that that's what we want it to be, then to just state that too, so that we're not coming in with an agenda, right? We're not coming in with kind of the check boxes that we want to make. So for me, I know that, and there's the paradox, right? It's like the definition and the non-definition at the same time. But one of the things I just wanted to note here is what I really sense from just about everybody's check-in is a sense of like loneliness, right? A sense of somewhat isolation, right? A sense of wow, like how do we just connect, you know, and the challenges of that in each of our places. And what I find refreshing is to just reflect on the fact that rather than making me more lonely, it actually makes me feel connected and held, and it's therapeutic for me. It's restorative. So I just want to actually name that and share that in. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for naming that, Tricia. Pamela.
No, it's lovely, Tricia. I think it really speaks to something powerful. Yeah, I appreciate that it can be all that yes and stuff. And so if what emerges has some structure, it has some structure. I really enjoyed the presentation that Meaty gave, Jan, Gail, RJ. Like, I really appreciated having an opportunity to have that focused moment of insight into somebody's place and their relationship to it through whatever project that they were engaged in. That was really rich. Doesn't have to be all the time. It could be something different. I really like the idea of having that flexibility. Also, for myself, I find myself starting to come up against the urgency and how, you know, there is no urgency. Like, I'm starting to feel like you mentioned it, RJ, it's now. You know, the urgency is past. We're past the urgency. You know, we're on the other side of urgent, it feels to me. And so the slowing down or the speeding up, like, what does the moment require? And let that happen in a given context according to certain needs and possibilities. I'm finding myself driving myself crazy with a sense of urgency and realizing I'm going to die. Everybody's going to die. What's happening right now? That's enough. We don't have much time. Meaty, I'd really like to hear from you. I'd like to hear from Chad.
As a much in the moment being, the energy has shifted. It feels like there's been a slowing down. And that feels really healthy because it enables me to breathe and, in a sense, just be here with us now. I'm really interested to explore something Jan named, because it's only recently I've become aware of how present Canada is in Earth regenerators, and how interesting that we have Gail just on the other side of the border, and how that artificial boundary of nation state can obscure that Jan and Gail are in the same neck of the woods. I'm really, really interested to know what Toronto is going to bring into the bioregional activators, bioregional catalyst, Joe Penny experience, Earth regenerator field. I'm really curious about that. I was stimulated to put my hand up to say a lot more, but I think I've said quite enough. Thank you.
Chad.
It's me. Yeah, I also felt that slowing down and yeah, sort of a keen observation. I think one thing that I respect and enjoy about the space is its intelligence and its extreme responsiveness. And yeah, when we opened up the conversation, I was thinking, what do we need? KPIs, key performance indicators? No, that wouldn't be right. But sometimes they're helpful, right? So just sort of feeling into what that means. And it's a kind of space that is, right? Sometimes, like Emily was saying, structures can be important. Are we an organization? No, I mean, some organizations are more like machines in the sense that they're hardened structures and you can keep on putting like energy into them and they'll do what they do, and you can have replacement people and replacement parts and they'll still keep chugging along. Sometimes that's helpful. That's I think what we want. Yeah, so I was thinking about like why I keep coming back to the space, and I just get recharged. I wish I could say more like practical results, and I do want, I can see practical results manifesting and can think of ways, but week to week, it's like, getting recharged and taking a sort of quality here and then to the rest of my day. And for me, that's enough. And part of me thinks maybe I should be like more results oriented. But that arrives when it's supposed to arrive. And yeah. And so, part of it is also knowing it's a space where it's always a quality conversation to be had. And it's also open in the sense that, when somebody has something more like particular, like, so Jen, you give an example of me in the courses, right? I know that they'd be receptacle to discuss and explore that, which is great too. And yeah, I just sort of remarking the last year or so, there's been lots of changes within bioregional catalysts, and it's endured and evolved, which speaks to the sort of the collective intelligence and also the individual intelligence. So if there's a concern there, it's just a concern of keeping that like sensitive and alive and not, because there are moments where people have to step aside, and like in many places where there can be burnout if there's not too much acknowledgement of what it takes to keep things going. So yeah, just gonna bring in some awareness to that, and that's what's with me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's one of the things about earth regenerators in general, and the catalyst specifically is about the always weaving back into the deep relationship and acknowledging that in the moment, and then moving out into then how are we working with that, and then coming back into this reflective space. So being able to support both of those. And following that is that weave of, the excitement of watching what's happening with Joe and Penny, and at times Benji, doing the work in Colorado and now in Toronto and maybe other places, and the excitement of the opening of that contact and those workshops, and the focused consciousness of that work, and then this space here where we're talking about completely different levels and engagements of different diverse bioregions that maybe just doing a little inkling of something to start with, and yet that is also as important and needs to have the time and energy and focus as well. So there's something about being able to give space to weave those all in as being important for the work that we're doing, and the recharging. I love that term, Chad. And Pamela, and then maybe we're going to need to do a getting ready for a checkout.
I'll be really quick. Jen, thank you for holding this space. I feel that there is a qualitative shift in the possibilities that are entertained here. And I really appreciate just how beautifully you've elicited so much from everybody through this holding. So thanks, just thank you, that's all. And that's my checkout too. Except to say thank you to everybody else also. I love you all.
Well, maybe just let's do a little brief checkout so we can kind of end on time, but yet still acknowledge the wisdom and intelligence that is being created here, and what we hope for more. So anybody that wants to go in and then pass it on.
Ram Dass has this saying, which I just love, which is, we're all just walking each other home. And that's what I feel like when I'm in this group. So thanks for engaging in this walk together. And I'll pass it to RJ.
I'm thinking always better understanding the edge and how it is not at all a boundary. It is a moving place of connection. Yeah, that's without going into too much. Yes, that's what I'm feeling and finding.
And pass it to somebody.
Midi.
Thank you, RJ. Well, I'm seeing an emergent possible purpose and function for this group beyond what I've previously seen, because I so agree with everything I've heard by way of checkout. But I'm having a sense that this can be a place where the urgency and the activity of the Joe Benji phenomenon can be brought into a space where we can breathe together and digest it together and integrate it as part of a somehow more diffuse and really important. Somebody used the word in Vivere working group yesterday of polycentric. I think a more many position space. So my checkout word is breathing. Thank you, and I'll pass to Gail.
Yeah, just to have a little trickster energy. I'm going to throw out the first half of winter giving way to the second half of winter, which is the quickening, as emergence. Oh, goodness. And I'll pass to Preston.
Thanks, Gail. A couple thoughts come to mind. RJ mentioned the edge, and the edge is the place of change. It's the place of evolution. It's the place of frantic at some levels. But then Midi mentioned bringing it back to center. And so I think that journey, edge to center, comes to mind for me. And within that framework, not long ago, I mentioned my word was trepidatious as I entered. And I think it was trepidatious to the whole community. And I think at this point, I can very comfortably say I have not acted trepidatious at all. I have seemed to have jumped immediately to a center. So it's a lot of different things unfolding. I will pass to Chad.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I thought that I was maybe having to jump off a little bit earlier to be responsible, to step to the edge. Yeah. But there's time enough for that. And yeah, so I also am looking forward to the Great Lakes tour. And I don't know if we'll have a chance to meet Preston, perhaps, Toronto, but maybe you can look forward to that. And yeah, just feeling much more centered going out than when I did coming into the meeting. So thank you all. And let's see. Jan?
I think everybody else is gone. So I'm feeling the important balance of an in-breath and an out-breath, and that they're both so important in my being, in our being. And it feels a little bit, that's the energy of the Joe Penny and the engaging and integrating that we do. And then maybe we do the same with our own bioregions. There's an in-breath and an out-breath, and that they're both needed. So something about that. So appreciating today and looking forward to seeing you in the many other spaces that we share, and really continuing to learn more about each one of you and your bioregions and how we can help each other with the individual work and then this collective shared space that we swim in. Thanks all for today.
Thanks, Jan, so much for holding the space.
Thanks. Yes.
Bye, everybody.